Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to wait a few seconds to let everybody join today. Okay, welcome to the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland, which we know more informally as PRONI. My name is Stephen Scarth, and I'm Head of Public Services here at PRONI, which means I look after all visitor-related activities and events. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all today to the launch of Behind the Hill. Now, Behind the Hill is a project that's been in play for a while. It's created by three artists, two of whom are here with us today: Susan Hughes, Emily Esdale, and Oonagh McAteer. Our curators today were inspired by PRONI's archives, having attended a previous exhibition here at PRONI entitled Colouring the Past, which was organised by the reclusive and enigmatic artist Antico. And following that, our three creators drew inspiration from the records here at PRONI. Some of their output can be seen on the Behind the Hill website, and a few of the images are available to see in PRONI today. They're displayed alongside some of the archives that inspired them. So before I invite Susan to speak, just wanted to say a couple of housekeeping notes. Today's talk is being recorded, so if you don't want to appear in the recording, please feel free to turn your video off. I should also note you're all muted on entry so that we don't have background distractions. So it's now my pleasure to invite Susan Hughes to come and speak to us and tell in greater detail the story of Behind the Hill. Thank you, Susan.
Thanks very much. Am I on the camera? Okay. Hello, everybody. Hello to the people in the room who've come to support us and listen to our stories, and to the people on all over the world online. I just want to talk briefly about myself and Oonagh and Emily and our working relationship. We have, a year ago, we graduated from the Masters of Fine Art course in the University of Ulster, so that's where we met. I suppose we all have shared interests in, well, research is a huge part of our practice, but also we're all interested in the land, in the humans' interaction with the land, in the sense of home and belonging. We all use lots of different disciplines, but that includes storytelling and text. Oonagh and Emily come from a background in photography. Myself, I studied painting a long time ago, but in our masters we were doing everything: video, photography, installation, immersive installations where, you know, we tried to create a sort of bodily sensation on our viewers. So that's just a bit about our backgrounds. We've really enjoyed working together in this project, and a special thanks to PRONI, and especially Glyn Kelso, who helped us navigate through the archives, which are quite overwhelming in their vastness. And in the end, we looked at loads of different, we just went down lots of different lanes, but in the end, we kind of, each of us focused in on one of those tangents or one of those avenues, and that's what we're going to talk about today, and the artwork that we made from that. Sorry, excuse me. So Oonagh McAteer is going to be the first presentation. Unfortunately, Oonagh is not able to be here today, so I'm going to try and do her presentation for her. And so forgive me if it's a bit clunky. Okay, so Behind the Hill, Oonagh McAteer. This is the diary of Francis McKay. Francis McKay is a business owner from Armagh. His brother is a priest. He's the man of the family because his father passed away. He lives with his mum and his two sisters. He takes care of everything and is very involved in the community. He was involved in a decision to fund and finish the two spires on Armagh Cathedral. So Oonagh is saying why she was asking herself, why did she choose this diary to focus on of all the things in the PRONI archive? This is the diary here. She was always interested in secrets and the stuff behind closed doors or the quiet, private thoughts of people. So when she realized in PRONI that you could look through people's diaries, she was pretty excited about that. She read through a few diaries and she liked the writing style as much as the content. Short sentences meant as a memory aid as opposed to full descriptions that you would have in literature, for example. She liked observing what is written about and what is not written about in the diaries. The quote that kind of really caught her eye was when she was flicking through the transcriptions. These are the transcriptions which you can read on the PRONI website before you ask for the item itself. It was one entrance in the diary where Frances had written, "This morning, found only the remains of my canary, Bluebell. Its fate was a sad one, and so are now the memories from which it got its name. It was killed by some cat which got in. I shot the cat." That was 29th of January 1867. So she was kind of captivated by this weird diary entry about the canary. And she just decided, yeah, I'm going to stick with this diary. This surreal diary entry sold me on Frances McKee's diary. I printed out the transcription and stayed with it. Beyond the canary story, there were lots of interest in political things about the Fenians who were just rising. Frances died in 1875, aged just 40, so he wouldn't have got to see the full 1916 rising. During further research, I found his father died 2 years before died having lived through the famine. So there was interesting political stuff, but Oonagh chose not to focus on that. The second time she read over the diary, she realized the name Kate kept reappearing. She started to piece together what was happening with Frances and Kate. She built a timeline and tried to decipher patterns. She was reading between the lines, so you can see there, letter from Kate. There were just these kind of sporadic mentions of Kate, and she was trying to figure out who Kate was. So she made this timeline. February 1867. Kate very ill last night. 14th of March, Kate went to Warren Point by the 2:20 train. 20th of March, had a letter from Kate. 21st of March, wrote to Kate. 29th of March, wrote to Kate a cry of anguish. 4th of April, had a letter from Kate. 5th of April, wrote to Kate a long letter explaining to her in exactly what terms she and I stood. Then 7 letters back and forth between the pair. 22nd of May, Frances went to the train to meet Kate this morning. She did not come. Then he had a letter from Kate which was agreeing to his proposal. Kate agreed in a disagreeable manner. So just from all of that, that's all Oonagh had. She started to really wonder who this Kate was. Was there any, this was all that seemed to exist of Kate. In PRONI, you look at a written description of your item as well. And there's no photos of the item or anything, and then you request it, but you've no idea what the item will look like. So it's a very exciting moment when you get your box, the archival box, and you look at inside and see your item that you've already become familiar with. Oonagh imagined the diary being, you know, a big chunky thing, at least A5, but in fact it wasn't much bigger than her phone. By the time she got hold of it, she had read the words and she was already invested. She felt an immediate connection to this man to hold something of his. All the nuances of his handwriting were now a thing, little notes and gaps. The writing was very tiny in places and very scripted, which she found hard to read. So that would have been a barrier to her explorations, and she wouldn't have found Kate. So the transcriptions that PRONI offer, or the service that they provide, is really valuable. Oonagh even wondered, had Kate actually bought this diary for Frances, because she was in the very first entry of the diary. So Oonagh started delving deeper, trying to find Kate and the baby. She started looking at parish records and started to visit physical locations. She went to Frances's grave on Ogle Street, where he had lived and worked. She went with ease between Armagh and Warren Point, even though there is no longer a train service. She visited the green where they had walked, the seafront where he dined and the sea where he swam. She says it was strange to be in the footsteps of her characters. Oonagh is still looking for Kate's grave and any information about what happened to the baby. When she realised that the fragments of the diary were the only solid parts of Kate remaining in existence, she wanted to make more of them instead of just living in the PRONI archive. That's the street, Oakle Street in Warpoint, I think. So Oonagh had lots of different ideas. In the end, this is the green where they walk together. These are all drone photos of Oonagh's. And the shore where he went, Francis would have gone for a dip after visiting Kate. That's looking down the valley towards the sea. Okay, so Oonagh had lots of different ideas, but in the end, she decided to stitch the words onto ribbon and tie those onto the railings which lead into the water at Warren Point. Poetic in their isolation and out of context, these short phrases, the phrases being just those diary entries that you saw on that list, the timeline. These short phrases create space for a new narrative to be invented by the viewer. Out of these scant sentences, Oonagh says, I feel as if I know Kate's character. She is strong and feisty, but vulnerable and disadvantaged as a pregnant woman out of wedlock in a judgmental society. She says, I chose this location because it's where Francis seemed to go for a dip after visiting Kate, almost like he was washing his sins away, trying to cleanse himself. This was a somewhat performative artwork. It was important for me to tie the ribbons on myself and be in that place. The site-specific installation proved very interactive and tactile, capturing the attention of locals and passers-by, sparking conversations and expanding the memory of Kate. Oonagh says, I settled on using ribbons because Francis himself was a draper, among other things. I thought the bright ribbons dancing in the wind were a celebration of Kate's life and the life of her baby. Their lives would otherwise be a disappearing breath on the wind with no voice and no legacy. Another aspect of my project has been looking at the whole archive concept, the retaining of information, the tension between the legacy of digital and hard copy memories. On Instagram, I've been putting Francis's Kate diary entries in my Instagram stories without any explanation. And I've been publishing them on the same day as they're in the diary. For example, had a letter from Kate, 28th of March, 1867, is then she published that on 28th of March, 2022. Instagram stories stay up for 24 hours, so viewers may see a post once, but it won't appear again. They're ephemeral, like an early morning dream. Some of the comments I've had from people have found them unusual, perplexing, and don't understand what these posts are. But I think Oonagh really likes that mystery and sort of lack of explanation. That's kind of part of what she's interested in. On my PRONI research journey, Oonagh says, I looked at a lot of other material too, including these aerial photos. These are aerial photos. These were private secret documents. Any aerial photo was taken was rarely seen outside of the military or the government. But now, as an independent female artist, I have access to a drone. I can just get the drone set up and take an aerial photo of anything I like, says Oonagh, whereas Kate did not have choices as a woman at that time. The characters of Kate and Francis and the baby are so solid and real. I feel a responsibility to them. I carry the diary with me, and I will carry this project through until the day the diary ends at the end of the year, December 31st. I can't just put Kate back in a drawer. So Oonagh says you're invited to follow her on Instagram, where she'll continue to post the diary entries until the 31st of December. And she wanted to end with the very last diary entry from Francis. Sorry, that's just the branch with the ribbons that you saw out in the foyer for the people who are here in real life. This is the last diary entry. I felt rather ill and lazy this morning. Our market was very good. We sat until the joy bells announced to us a new year born. May it be happier than this one, which has now come to an end. So thank you everyone for listening to Oonagh's presentation, and we'll now move on to Emily's.
Hi everyone, thanks very much again for coming today, and for the people here online as well. It's great to see so many people here. So I'm just I know Susan touched a bit of background on us, but just to reintroduce myself. So I'm Emily Esdale. I'm a visual artist, and I mainly use photography and video and sometimes text within my work. I'm always very drawn to the landscape within my work, and usually use it as a conductor to express sort of my vulnerability as an artist. So whenever I started looking into the archives here at PRONI, there was so much material, I just didn't know where to begin, but it was a great feeling. There was so much. I don't know about you, Susan. So I decided to research where I come from. 12 years ago, I moved to an area called Ballyboley, which is sort of in between Ballymena, Larne and Ballyclare. So if you can sort of see the dot that's on the map here. And I thought it would be quite an interesting area to research because, like I said, I moved there 12 years ago. And although there is a sense of home with it, sometimes I have questions about it. That maybe, where has this come from? Or you hear different stories from the locals there. And I just thought it would be an interesting place to start to research. So this is an old, this is on the PRONI, the maps you can get online. So if you can see the dot there, I think this map is from the 1878 or so. And I initially looking at them, I was really interested in the structural value of these different fields in the land that you can see within the maps. So that's where I essentially started, was to understand the areas that I was from, and to see if I could get a bit more information about that. This is the map now for the people here online, and this is displayed lovely out in the foyer in PRONI. So this is the first map I had looked at, and you can see in the bottom right hand corner of it, there's a lot of different names of people who owned a certain field, and you can see how they're all nicely divided. And like I say, I really like that structural element. Because whenever I'm driving past a field or the landscape, you don't necessarily see that. So I was quite drawn in how maybe one field was owned to somebody, and then the next field beside it was somebody else, and the field after that was back to the original person. So I was interested in how the land from all these years ago, how people went about owning it, how people went about how they knew what was theirs. So then I started looking into the maps more. So this is more of a map where you can see its larger range of area, where you can see there's more of County Antrim and everything. These maps, whenever I got them out, now some of them were very big, and I think, as Susan said in Unagh's presentation, it was amazing not knowing what you were getting from PRONI whenever you went to pick up your item. Some of these took up the whole desk, and there was just, I don't know, there was just something so lovely about even the texture that some of them were on, the way you could see how it's been preserved. It was a really, really exciting experience for me, even though at this point, at the start of my research, I didn't really know exactly what I was going to do with it. But it was just nice to be able to actually understand the tangibility of these items as well, and not just go onto Google and just type into Google map of such and such. So here's another map that I looked at, and you can see here more different structural elements to the fields and the land. So after I was looking at all this of the area of Ballyboley, these are just some of my research notes, because I didn't know whether I was going to look into the folklore element of Ballyboley, or what else I was going to look into. So for me, it was really important whenever I was up there to take notes of each item or object that I got out, and make notes of what was interesting to me and what wasn't. it was great because I just feel like I got lost literally with the item and no other distractions. So there's just some other research of dates and everything, but what I was looking at. So after I decided, okay, I want to focus in more on the land in Ballyboley, I got out these farm fee grants, essentially, and of Ballyboley, and essentially it led me to understanding who owned the land. Whenever I think it says here somewhere that the rent that they would have to pay for the specific land was £5.50 for the year. Now that doesn't seem like a lot now, but back then, you know, that was a lot of money. And it was William Craig and Alexander Craig who owned the land back, I think it was 1878, which to me is still really interesting because I still know a few Craigs who are from that area now. So obviously their generation's been passed down. So the more I decided to read through this farm fee grant, I noticed that there was different elements within the land that they had to maintain, which I found really interesting because, like I say, I live in the area, and whenever I look out my windows, I can see all these different fields, and I find it extremely interesting to see how they've been preserved throughout the years, and also the correlation of that's what they had to do back then, and this is, you can still see it's present within the land now. So I know it's going to be a bit blurry here for the people that are here, but maybe the ones online can see it better. They mention, I think it's towards the bottom, essentially they mention different elements that they had to maintain. So the ditches between the lands, they had to be, sorry, I'm just trying to look for it here. Well, essentially all the ditches and everything, they had to be maintained. If there was any rivers flowing through the land, they had to maintain them. They couldn't be blocked off. I think in this one it says that the stone walls had to be 4 foot high. All the trees, they had to be maintained, kept to a certain height. So from reading through this, I found it really interesting to understand the different elements that they had to, you know, maintain. And if one person from the town was to disrupt that they had to go through and fix it. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so that's from my notes. What I found out throughout reading the farm fee grants. So there's 43 acres, 1 foot, and 29 perches throughout Ballyboley, and it's situated lying and being in the parish of Ballyeaston. So they had to use fences or entrapment for anything more than 10 acres, including rocky areas. So that's where all the different, looking from the maps, you can see all the structural elements of the fields. And the trenches, they had to be kept the same size, 6 feet wide, and on the top 2 feet and 1 foot wide. That's what it said in the thing, so I don't know what that means. The good stone wall height was 4 feet high, and preserve the plants and good trees. Any stream or river mustn't be blocked, and they must be kept in substantial condition. Sorry, so this, you can see here in this one, this is within the conveyance of the land, yeah, to Alexander Craig. So you can see the different areas, the different fields. You can see some of them was for William Craig, some of them was for Alexander Craig, even though they were brothers, but they had their own lands to maintain. So for my artwork, I decided to essentially research to see what correlation I could make between the elements that they were told that they had to maintain and then what I could still see. So this image was a scan. I have a portable scanner, so I decided to scan up one of the stone walls, which is 4 foot high, just to try and it's nearly a performance element or a performative element to doing this, to really understand the height and how laborious it would have been back in the days to, you know, actually stand and build a stone wall that's 4 foot high, and how they're still obviously present. This was another portable scan that I did of the land. So I got my scanner and walked along the land. To me, it was just interesting that this land has been around for so many years and so many people have walked on it. And, you know, it was just a way of me finding out the history more about it. And then I decided to start documenting the elements that, like I say, were in the farm fee grants. So this was an example of one of the stone walls. I couldn't find any of the walls that were actually 4 feet high, so I got quite close to it, but not exactly. So I decided to document it in black and white. I decided to do it in 35mm black and white because I found rather than just using a digital camera, there was something nice about going to the archive and having, you know, these elements that are handheld and there's tangible. So for me, photographing this all with film, it nearly represented that tangibility again, where I was developing them and then scanning them in, and there were these handheld objects. This was one of the streams that was running through one of the fields in Ballyboley. So obviously it couldn't be blocked or anything. So that's why I took that to represent that's still being maintained by the farmers now. This is an up-close photo of part of the stone wall, and you can see there's bits of dirt and algae and everything on it. So just to show the age of how long they have been there for. And there's another one with a bit of, I think it's like a bit of mold that's on it, and the different, you know, roots and everything growing in between it, how long they've been there for. There you can see better as well the stream running through the fields, and you can also see in the background the stone walls dividing the fields. So obviously this isn't just what happens in Ballyboley. This is universal throughout Northern Ireland, Ireland and the rest of the UK. So I just found it interesting that these rules have nearly been set all these years ago and they're still followed. Yeah, there's another one of the stones. It was some of them was quite difficult to actually find out in the landscape, but I really enjoyed trying to compare the two, and I definitely feel like this project is just the start, and I definitely want to use PRONI more to get a bit more research to follow on with this project. So thanks very much everybody for listening here, and now I'm just going to move on to Susan and for our last presentation. Okay, thanks, Emily. That was great. So my name is Susan. I'm an artist, but I'm also a fiddle player. My fiddle informs my art practice. Playing folk music brings me to particular places, often spectacular coastal places where the music has survived due to its remote or geographically hostile environment, such as southwest Donegal, which is for the people who are here, or also the Hardanger Fjord in Norway, which is a place I've done several artist residencies. Through learning tunes, I would get access to an expansive historical context of the place, which gives me a deeper understanding of humans' connection with the land and the sea, and the use of language and folklore in expressing this connection. While in these places, the act of swimming in the sea would create a physical, bodily dimension to this process, learning process. So photos that I take in the sea become visual mementos of it all. My fiddle itself has become an invaluable bartering tool as well. I now play tunes for people in return for local knowledge and stories, or a ride in a boat, or homemade beer. The music really opens things up. So Glenconkill is a faraway place at the far side of southwest Donegal on the edge of the Atlantic. So in the picture, it is literally the very end of the land on the left of the here. And in Glenconkill, every August there is a fiddle week. And it was here that I experienced a pivotal moment learning a tune, a particular tune called The Drowning at Bruckless from a fiddle teacher called Ronan Galvin. The Drowning at Bruckless, it's a pretty jig with an underlying air of melancholy. As the title indicates, it was named after drowning. In particular, it refers to
a critical storm in February 1813, which killed several fleets of fishermen. A lot of boats were lost, and it killed a lot of fishermen all along the west coast of Ireland. Donegal, Glenconkil, Kilcar, and this place, Brookless, Killybegs too. So I'm going to play the tune for you in a minute, but I'm just going to tell you the darker side of the story. So I'm going to read a quote from a book called The Other World, Music and Song from the Irish Tradition. The well-documented tragedy known as the Great Brookless Drowning occurred on February the 8th, 1813. A large herring fishing fleet was operating in Brookless at the time. Brookless is just along from Glenconkil, near somewhere like there. Near that big spit of land coming out, which is St. John's Point. The men came from Donegal Town, Inver, Ardra, Tailin, and St. John's Point. As they set out this particular evening, the sea was calm and the weather was good. However, a storm arose, and following the disaster, it was estimated that between 300 and 500 fishermen were lost. But what I was really interested in, what intrigued me as a 19-year-old learning this tune, the tragedy is said to have been caused by an old woman, Biddy Devaney, who cursed the fishermen and their boat for refusal to give her a supply of fish. She used to visit the boats every morning down at the pier and ask for her share of herrings. For a time, the fishermen were happy to give her a share until her requirements began to appear excessive. The fishermen then decided they would no longer agree to her demands and refused to give her the fish. The old woman vowed she would seek revenge, and she ordered a local girl to bring a basin of water to her house. The old woman then set a capon, or a wooden bowl, floating on the top of the basin of water and asked the girl to wash the water. When the girl observed the water becoming agitated, the old woman began her cursing, and following the woman's third query about the state of water, the reply was that the water was in a rage and the bowl turned upside down. Following the drowning, Biddy was never seen again. So basically how the story goes is that Biddy Devaney, this kind of hag, you would have said in Irish, Celtic, she got this child, a local child, to curse her own family. So all of those fishing boats that drowned were the child's own family. So it sort of created this really magical aspect to this tune and a very dark story. So sitting in this fiddle class, age 19, the story and the tune captivated me utterly. And before I do anything, I'll play the tune. So that's the tune, we're drowning at purpose. We all play it on pubs in Donegal and Belfast, everywhere. So yep, sitting in this fiddle class, age 19, I was totally captivated, and it was the first time that it made sense to me that the music was not simply a pile of notes in a particular order to be mastered with straightforward practice, but instead it was a direct line to past stories of other humans' interaction with the land and the sea. And I began to understand the role of storytelling and understand what folklore really was. So when I began researching in PRONI, I started thinking about boats, I suppose, in particular, the gendering of boats, selkies, fishing folklore. I'd seen a lot of stuff in the folklore archive in Dublin, the UCD, but much of that is from the school's archive, I think, which we didn't have up here. So I couldn't really find much of interest. But then I decided I would just see if I could find anything to do with this tune, the Drowning at Brookless. I didn't expect to find anything, so I was surprised to find this letter. It's referring directly to the storm that the tune is about. I double checked the dates with my friend who knows all the history of this tune, and yet it's the right one. So this is a letter from the rector of Killybegs, I guess maybe Church of Ireland, and he is writing to his superior in Dublin, begging for help, for aid, for the families of the fishermen. And he says, these unfortunate men have left 30 widows and 102 children, many of whom entirely depended upon the exertions of the deceased for support. And he talks about all the boats that were lost, and that families, children lost their uncles and their dad and their brother and their grandfather, all in this one event. And that no one knew, that it was just these families were completely destitute. It was a very poignant moment when I had the letter in my hand. Like, you don't even, you just get these objects in your hand. It's quite an amazing moment. Reading about these orphans in Killybegs, which is just down from Brookless. The tune came to life in a new and very tragic and visceral way. So Killybegs, I'm sure some of you know it. It's a fishing port on your way to Glenconkill, on your way up to Slieve Lake in Donegal. And I go there on my way to play music. It's not very attractive or interesting place. It's full of these giant boats that go and dredge up the sea for fish. It kind of makes me feel sick. But anyway, every time I go through it, my eye is caught by this particular colour. You can see it there in the photo on the railings, but then on the railings, the far side where the boats are, this like fluorescent orange. It's amazing. I love it. It's a really synthetic interruption in the otherwise greyness of the sea and the concrete and the sky. And it's a high vis paint to warn you of the edges of the pier, so that you can see where the edge is and you don't fall in. And for me, it's kind of calls to the urban rave part of myself. 2 years ago, I decided I had to have that paint, so I managed to source a tin of it from the one of the big shops in Killybegs. It's about this size, quite a lot of paint. If anybody wants some fluorescent paint, let me know. And it was very expensive as well. I like the name of it. It's just called High V. Simple is the name of the brand, and High V is the name of the color. Since then, I've been using it in my visual artwork, and I use it as a kind of like plot to shock the viewer into like consciousness about, I kind of to try and encourage them to really think about the sea and the visceral nature of the images that I'm portraying. So here I screen printed over a background of High V. Okay, so in PRONI, I really like looking through the photographs in particular. There aren't loads of photos in PRONI, so you can kind of look through the whole directory and get a handle on what's there, like pretty quickly. It's not as overwhelming as if you're looking for a particular document or church record. I decided to try to source images referring to the Drowning at Brookless. So I used some images of Killybegs Harbour, Killybegs being the place where I found this letter referring to the storm. And I also combined it with other photos from different sources and locations to build a series of collages in reference to the storm and the tune and the letter. So these are fishing boats coming out of our glass harbour. And then these are just children after Strabane floods, devastation after floods. So these aren't, orphans necessarily, but they were images that I thought I could use to represent the orphans in Killybegs. And I kind of like the very direct gaze of the children. Okay, so this is some of the artwork that I made. These are photos of Killybegs Harbour abstracted through the deletion of the sea, replaced with the high V painted card. And then I also made even more abstract collages using parts of the harbour. So this is like that grey bit in the middle is part of the harbour, and just cut out of the image, and just kind of reimagining the photos, I suppose. They're using part of Killybegs Harbour and again the high V paint as well. And then these are, and I did stuff with the boats as well, kind of, and just kind of neon, make the boat sails neon. I kind of like playing around with that. These are the collages I made with the photos of the children. Then the orphans in the letter that the rector refers to were probably a lot poorer than these kids, but the directness of the children's gazes were what I was really drawn to. And these collages include photos that I took in the water while I was swimming. So again, it sort of links back to my own body experiencing these areas in a different way. And the final image that is displayed, these are my references. If anyone wants to look up any of these photos, we can give you the references. The final image I have on display in the foyer in PRONI is it's a photo that I took in 2014 it was a storm, and during that I was up in Donegal for New Year, and at that time a body went missing, a person went missing, and it was an assumed suicide. And in the following days, the cliff edges and the shore edges and the fields became populated with people in high vis searching for the body. And they were like these tiny, so this is you can't see, this person is in like fluorescent yellow, and it's like this tiny dot of color in the vast landscape. On the 10th day, the man's body was found in Kilcar Bay, just a stone's throw from Rocklas, which is where the tune is about. So the sea still takes human life. And I'm just going to end playing, that's a close-up of the people looking for the body. I'll just play another tune. Called Bahu Wachu, which means Matthew's drowning, and it's about it's a slow air about a guy called Matthew who was from Kilcar, which is where this man who drowned, his body was found, and Matthew was in love with a girl. The girl had to emigrate to America. He was devastated. She was going to go over, save money, send back money so he could join her. But he waited, and the letter never came, and he decided to swim to America. He didn't make it. So this is Bahu Wachu.